everyone, this is Dodie and I am on vacation, so I have a Monday to try and put together a tutorial. And I had shown a couple of folios that I made recently and was asked if I would do a tutorial. It's not very hard. I learned from others, many other tutorials that I've seen like over the last 10 years. So I'm just going to quickly show you what I cobbled together from what I remembered. We're going to end up with a folio that looks about like this. This one right here is one I made using ruby and pearl papers, and it opens up. It has fun places, fun pockets, fun places to put little scratch pads, and so I thought we would work towards this. Now, my plan was I was going to use these Paper Cameo papers on part 2. Part 1 is going to be actually just constructing the folio so that you can then start laying papers on top of it. So we'll see how it goes. I may break it up into 2 different tutorials, but to start, we're going to just begin with part A, which is folding up the folio. So to begin, what I want to do is I did mark, now this is a legal size folder. I ran out of my letter size file folders, but this is a legal size file folder. And what I did was I marked it right about the height that I want the folio to be. So, but you've got to take into account that you're going to be folding up pockets. So what I'm first going to do is I'm going to cut it off about right here, which is about the size of the pockets that I want to fold up. So I'm just going to cut off the end of this file folder like that. And then what I want to do is I'm going to mark it again so I sort of have an idea of where I want it to be. And cutting it, I may have cut them too long, and we can always trim it. So the next thing I want to do is I want to trim off all this extra file folder part. Now it could be fun to leave some of these tabs and things on the file folder, but I just am making a very simple folio. So we're just going to cut off the edge and square it all up, and I'm going to tear that last bit off. So there we have our template for what we want to be folding up. We've got a file folder that we've cut down in size, and now I'm going to do some scoring on my scoreboard to get the pockets just right. So the folio that I've sort of used as my model is about 8.5 inches long. I've cut it off at 11 inches to make about a 2.5 inch pocket. Now, the first thing we're going to want to do is we're going to want to score. We're going to want to, not score, we're going to need to fold each side in to meet the middle of the file folder seam, just like that. Just fold it in, not quite on top of the seam, but close to the seam so that it doesn't interfere with the folding. We're going to get that folded just like that and make sure it folds properly, and it does. Folds nicely. And so what you can see is it's going to fold out and fold up like that. And then the next thing I want to do is I want to score up some pockets up to about the full height of the file folder. So I'm going to score these at about 8.5 all the way across like this. And what you're going to end up with is you're going to end up with 4 compartments. I'm going to fold this up so that the fold is nice and crisp on all of these pockets that are going to become pockets. Oops, sorry, I didn't mean to knock you. So now it'll fold up like this, except that it gets really bulky if you have all the pockets inside. So what we're going to do is we're going to cut right here on the outer pockets. We're going to take our scissors and we're just going to cut along that seam. Now, we may trim that up just to make sure we're not interfering with any of the closures, to make it easy to close. And then we're going to take those pockets and we're going to flip them up like this and flip them up like this so that they're on the outside. So what you're going to have is it's going to be, even though these two pockets are on the inside, these are in the deep inside, and it folds up like that. So what you should have is two pockets on the inside, two pockets on the flaps that close towards the inside, and no pockets on the outside. Now, you actually probably could construct it so that you could make that the outer fold if you wanted to, but I think it folds easiest if you fold the two in and then fold it in upon itself and just really try to press all of this down so that the folds are nice and tight. Now, what you'll find is some of these pockets kind of hang over like that. So what I like to do is I like to trim them up. Like I like to keep on the fold, take the pocket and trim it right up against the edge just so that it isn't hanging over, and do it on the other side as well. There's a little bit on that other side as well. Just go from the bottom and trim it up from the edge. That way it keeps it nice and in alignment. And then the other thing that I always notice when I make these is one always seems to be a little bit higher than the other. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to mark a line where this one seems to be the right, using the lower level pocket. I'm going to mark a line, and then I'm just going to take my cutting board, and I take my cutting board because I want it to be precise. I'm just going to take it and I'm going to cut right along that line to get it nice and even. And that should even up, and it does. It evens up those two pockets so they're nice. Now, you're going to need to separate this pocket so you got two separate pockets, or I suppose you could leave it as one pocket, but I think it works best as two pockets. So I'm going to cut as carefully as I can along the center like that. But what you sort of end up with is sometimes some interference in folding neatly. So I do like to actually trim this up. And once again, I'm going to get my cutter out. I'm just going to trim up those two insides. And the reason I use my cutter, and you can use scissors, but I have used scissors, and I find sometimes I get into that cycle where you don't like the neatness of your cut, so you keep cutting and you keep cutting and you keep cutting. But with the cutting board, I can just go up one side and then go on to the other side, and I'm just going to cut in just a little bit, just a little tiny bit, right up to the line there. Take it out. I'm going to finish this one off like that, and then I'm going to take them and I'm going to cut them off there. So what that does, it makes the edges nice and neat, and it doesn't really impede the folding too much. So it folds up and it's nice and flat. Now remember, you're going to be covering this with paper, and there's all kinds of things you can do with the folio. And as you can see, it's a really easy construction process to get it going. The next part is the fun part. It's the part where you're going to decorate your folio and decide what you want to do with it. And what I like to do is I like to look at it sort of like a canvas. And this is like the back wall of my folio. And I usually like to make this one continual pattern. So what I've chosen for this is I've got Paper Cameo's newest kit, and this is her Tea Rose kit. It's brand new. It's really, really, really pretty. And so I've trimmed all these papers that I printed out, and now I've already earmarked this one to use on the back. Now I've printed all my papers on on really, really lovely, high quality Southworth 34-pound paper, which adds a really nice strength and quality to these folios. So first we're going to just go ahead and we're going to glue down this background, and I'm going to use this seam right here as a center point and put it on here, and then I'm going to trim it up. And so I'm just going to quickly go around putting glue all around the edge of the center portion of the folio. Okay, so I'm going to line this up right in the center, and I'm going to just sort of smudge it up there. And then I'm going to take my wallpaper spreader, and I'm just going to spread it all across. And sometimes the papers don't quite meet at the bottom, but that's okay because your pockets are going to go up there. And sometimes I just add a little piece of lining right there that just sort of peeks through on the edges, but you really don't need anything there because you're going to have those pockets. And then I fold it in so we get a nice crease, because what I'm going to do is I'm probably going to tear it off because I like the way tearing looks. Let's see. I'm going to get it up close to the edge. Let me see if I do this, how it will look. Yeah, I'll tear it. I'm just gonna do that, and hopefully we're gonna think good thoughts and it will tear nice and easy. There we go. Okay, and then we're gonna do this side as well. Just tear it and see how nice that looks lining the back, how pretty it'll be with the two pockets. And the fun part is deciding what you're going to do with the pockets, if you're going to make double pockets, if you're going to have them be gusseted. I do like to make gussets in the pockets just because it adds room to put some extra tags and things in there. We're going to tear this one off as well. Like this. Okay. And I like that torn edge. I like the way that looks. So we've got the back on there like that. I'm going to, of course, save these little bits. And then I like to decide what I'm going to put on the side panels. So let me grab the papers and figure out what I want to put. Right, what I've chosen to do is I'm going to do my side panels with this rose vase. I love it so much. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to divide this piece of paper in half so I can work with just the rose vase portion of the paper. And I tend to be a little bit symmetrical. I believe in like sort of the laws of 3s and 5s and 2s and 4s, and in this case I like the idea of placing my centerpiece, my side pieces with the same pattern. Lots of times I do different patterns, but this time I'm going to do the same. Now, I've taken these curtains as my point of reference, and what I want to do is I want the panel to be with those curtains as the center. So I'm just going to quickly add some glue to this page and just lay down the paper real quickly, and then I'm going to trim it up after I get it on. I find that when you do these folios, the way to get them kind of nice and neat is to put your papers down, not try to pre-cut them, but put them down and then trim them, because it's easy to trim these folios because they fold up and you can move them around. Now, at the bottom, I know I'm not going to have quite enough room, so I'm going to just take a little bit of vintage book page and I'm going to place it at the bottom like this, just so that there's something going on at the bottom of the page. I'm gonna bend it in like this and just sort of rip it off there and over here as well. And lots of times what I do is I fold it. If I've got an outside, I fold it to the outside and tear it to the outside. Okay, so now taking my curtains where I've centered them, I've marked the place where the curtains need to be. I'm just going to place my roses on my panel like that. I'm going to take a little extra glue and glue down this piece right here onto my words, and that covers the whole page. There we go. Now what I'm going to do once again is I'm going to fold it in and make sure the crease is nice and tight like that. And then I'm going to fold it and I'm going to rip it down just to make it sort of have that, I don't know, I just like the look of ripped edges. I like neat cut edges as well, but sometimes I just like the look of ripped edges. And this paper that I'm using really lends itself. This paper is really heavy and it feels like the rag paper of old books. It really, really does. This is a book printed in the 1930s and it has really heavy rag papery feel to it. And now, like I said on the other side, let's see, I've just got a little bit left on the other side. I don't want to risk tearing it because you can see it's very narrow. So I am just going to cut this side nice and neat off the edge, just like that. So there's my first side panel. I've got something going on up here. I don't know what that is, but I'm cutting it off. Okay, so there's my first side panel. And then I'm going to do my other side panel to make it match so that they're symmetrical on each side. And once again, I've marked my curtains and I'm going to mark them on my panel to make sure I get them right where I want them. And then I'm going to, once again, I'm going to take some of my book page and just rip it off and place it at the bottom, just so that it doesn't have any of the file folder showing. And I will say that digital kits that have that are for tall thin journals work great for these projects because they're already designed long, so you won't need to be doing the filler things that I'm doing right now. But all digital kits work great, and I kind of like the patched look of the pages coming through these book pages. So here I'm gonna glue this down, and I've just got this piece of cardboard under here to pick up glue so I don't get it all over my scoreboard. And I know I'm kind of nutty the way I work with my scoreboard. I started out working on a scoreboard a long time ago, and I just have never graduated to a craft mat. And I like the fact that I can pick it up and my table can show. My husband made me this table for my craft room, so it's special to me. He looked at a picture in Pinterest that I showed him and he copied it, and he did such a great job. So anyway, I'm now going to take my second panel piece and match it up like that, just like that. And make sure it goes down. I'm going to erase my marks at the top. What's great about this paper is she's got marks built into, it's like sort of grunge marks that really the erasing just blends right in with them. And then I'm going to bend it again, crease that, make that crease extra nice and tight, and get it over to there like that. There we go. And then I'm going to rip it off. If it'll rip, hopefully it will. There we go. It's ripping pretty nicely. Okay. And then I'm going to lift this up and make sure I've got it glued down really good at the bottom. And of course they're fun because they sort of, I would say, I started making these, I'm not going to lie, I was in a little bit of a slump, and I started making these folios, and they really, really spark your creative juices. You've got to make decisions about putting papers together, and that's always really fun. And a digital kit, a whole digital kit can be just the perfect thing you need to just make one very coordinated color-wise folio. I want to make sure I don't cut my pockets off. I'm going to trim these words at the bottom. And there we have the side panels all done. So now look what we've got. We have got the inside pretty much covered except for our pockets. And now we have to work on these panels. Now I thought it would be really fun. This kit includes this really great, oh, where is it? Here it is. This really great image. I love these portraits. And so I thought it would be fun. In fact, I think I'm going to do something. I'll be right back. So what I've decided to do for my inner panels, the panels that fold in upon themselves, is I took this image, which I really love because I love these two portraits, but I knew I'd be cutting off the edges of these circles, and I knew that would bother me. So what I did was I reduced this paper down to 85%, and then I loved the look of the way this paper looks like it's been torn to be put on here. And so I just tore around the edges exactly as I followed the lines and just tore these two portraits out. And then I've chosen this piece to become the background for those pictures. And I know I'm going to have a little bit extra I need to fill in. So I've taken some of my scraps from my other inside panels, and I'm going to use it like that. So what the first thing I'm going to do is I'm just going to glue up. I'm going to glue up these two panels like this, and I'm going to place the paper onto them, and then I'm going to cut around it so I get it nice and even. And I'm going to just continue like this, gluing it on. And like I said, when you are maybe having a little bit of a crafting crisis, like you just don't know what you want to do next, and you just don't feel like you can face making a giant journal, making these folios is a really great way to get your creative juices back. So I do want the whole panel of lace to fit onto this side panel. So I'm going to just place these down like this, flatten them down. And the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to trim the edge over here. I'm just going to get my scissors, and these are my these used to be my best scissors, but now they've become my cutting when glue is wet scissors. And that's really good. And then I'm just going to cut up the middle like this, and then I'll trim it off. Let me just cut from down this way. Here we go. Meet in the middle, and then I will trim the edges like this. There we go. Trim the top because obviously I didn't get it on there straight, which is about par for the course with me. And trim this one off as well. Just trim it along here. And of course, I encourage you to fast forward all trimming and gluing, because I know you all know how to trim and glue. Okay, there we go. We got all that off. So there are, let's see how these look now. We gotta fold up our pockets. There. And see what I mean? How sometimes the folding, so I think I'm probably gonna trim off some of this right here when it's all said and done, because it's obviously interfering. So it's good to check for that as you go along. So here's my panel. And then I want to add these pictures to each panel like that. And I want to make sure that they stay above the pockets. So I am going to actually reserve and think about that before and you know, I don't even need to cover this because the pockets do cover it up all the way. If anything, I should probably use that on my inside right here and put it down there, because see, it would cover that up right there. I think that's what I'll do. I'll just glue that down close to the edge at the bottom of my pockets, and that will take care of that little tiny space that's going to show some manila folder, which I don't want it to do. I don't want any of the manila folder to be showing. So I'm just going to take it and place it on there like that. Stick it down. And I'm going to go through and I'm going to sort of go over all of these edges, gluing them and making them nice and stuck to the finished product. I'm going to cut that off like that. I think that one's okay for now. And fold my pockets up. I'm going to need to trim that. And see, the beauty of these folios is you can do things like this and trim as you go along. Let's see. Here we go. Okay. Don't want to cut my pocket. Oh darn, there I did. I was about to cut my pocket. See what I mean? I just showed you what you should not do. Okay, there we go. I cut a little bit into that pocket. That's a shame. I can fix it though. I will line it. Here we go. I'm gonna get some liner and I'm gonna just stick that on there like that and fix that pocket. So there, you learned how to repair a stupid mistake. I'm prone to stupid mistakes. I will be very honest about that. I tend to make a lot of really silly mistakes. But I've also, from my mistakes, I've learned how to patch. I've learned how to patch covers. I've learned how to go back in and patch pages or go over pages. And that'll work. And then when that's covered, you won't even know that that took place, because I am going to cover the fronts of these pockets. Okay, so there we go. And here are the pockets that go up here like that. And then you just see that little pink bit right there from the lining so that it doesn't show through with the manila folder. That folds in and that folds in. And then we are going to place these portraits right here. But I think I might do something special to them, so I'm not exactly ready to do that yet. The next thing we need to decide to do is how we're going to cover the front and the back. So let me decide which papers I want to use for that, and I'll be right back. Now here's a perfect example of what I was talking about tall, skinny journal papers. There is a piece of paper in this set that could be used in a tall, skinny journal concept. So I've decided I'm going to do this for the front and the back. Many times I make the back different from the front, but I am going to use this one continuous piece of paper, and I'm just going to put it all over both sides. So we'll just speed through this. All right, so I'm going to take the paper, I'm just going to lay it on the folio like this. I'm going to press it down, and then I'm going to trim all the way around. Now I suppose you could cover this first, and that's the other thing I want to say about this folio. I always start on the inside and work out. That's just my preference, but you may be the kind of person that wants to start on the outside and work inwards, and that's perfectly fine. And that's the beauty of these little projects, is once you get your folio base, which as you can see is very easy to make, you just then can decide how you're going to decorate it, and it's from there it becomes the most fun project, because you're not really worrying about too much of the mechanics of how it's going to come out. So now, just to make sure I do not cut off my pockets, I'm going to paper clip them down, and I'm going to take my scissors, oops, and I'm going to carefully cut along the bottom like this. Okay, I'm going to paper clip it from that angle, and I'm going to carefully cut all the way around the edge like that, and the top. I'm going to do the top as well. There. And I'm going to do the side. Okay, and now it's still wet, so I want to make sure that it dries really well before I fold it. So I'll be right back after it dries. Okay, so I have waited for it to dry, and I've come back and I folded it. And just so you know, to get the fold really nice, I started folding it this way and gave it a fold before I went inward and gave it a fold this way. And these were really knocking each other when I tried to shut it, so I did take just not even 1/8 of an inch off of each edge so that it would fold in nicely. And so I trimmed off each edge and made it nice and neat. And then I did go around and ink a lot of the edges just so that they would have that aged look. And so we've done that. And now what we have is we have our folio. We have things we need to finish in our folio. We need to do our pockets, and we need to do, I like to make a sort of a topper for each of my folios. So let's get started on the pockets. Hi, so what I did was I took the part of my double rose, my rose vase paper, the second half, and I tore it down so that each of these had a background like this. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to just glue each one of these onto their background, but I'm not going to go clear to the edge because I'm going to just sort of scrumple up the edges a bit to age it up a little. But I am going to give them a good layer of glue to go onto their little backgrounds like this. And there's that one. And then I'll put him on his background. And they may get sort of bashed around in the opening and closing of the folio, but I think that will add to their charm as it goes along if they have to sort of be smoothed out every now and then, but their edges will be kind of rumpled. So we'll put him on his background like that. There we go. And then before we do what I want to do to their edges, I am going to make sure the edges of their panels are nice and inked up before we start gluing them down. And then I'm going to put him on this side and her on this side, like this. Try to get them even, like that. And I am going to do a fairly good job of gluing down each one of these backgrounds. I'm going to try to get it all the way to the edge and fill in the edges after I put it down. So we'll do this one, put him down like this. There we go. And then we'll do her. I just think these little portraits are the dearest little faces. I just love them. I'm a lover of the 18th and 19th centuries. I just love them. And one of my goals in life, a bucket list, one of my bucket list items is to make a robe de la Française or a robe de Anglaise. I've got a book and a pattern, and I watched all of the videos I can possibly watch on how to make those dresses, and I have various fantasies about what I want to do. I either want to make little miniature ones for my granddaughter and my grandniece, or I want to make a full-size one and put it on my mannequin just to have in my studio. So now I'm going to do, I did add ink to the backs of these so that when I do the scrumpling part, the ink will show, hopefully. I'm going to glue them down a little bit better, get them really stuck to their backgrounds because we don't want them flailing around too much. Let me just get some more glue on here like this, get it down, get some more glue here. And then what I want to do is just go around like you all know how to do. I'm going to add some ink to that right there. I'm actually going to glue that down a little bit better. Like that. There we go. And glue this one down a little bit better, like that. But just go around. And this is something you can work on after it's done. So I think rather than waste your time watching me do this, you've got the idea. I'm going to work on it later, but that's what we're going to do for our inside panels. I'm going to fold them up. And probably we'll be using, of course, we'll have a ribbon closure of some kind. Maybe we'll have a bulldog clip closure. I'm not sure, because the other thing I like to do is I do like to put a bulldog clip inside or on this right here on this panel for the outside to clip on my extra my topper, and then make a pad right there. So we'll leave that option open for this. So we have our two inside pockets and our two secondary inside pockets, and let's get started on how we're going to decorate those, and then we'll talk about the front and the back. All right, so I've made some decisions on the kind of pockets I want to make. I have used the envelopes in the kit to construct these pockets. And what I did was I printed the envelopes on my printer at 75% each. That made them enough of a smaller size so that I could retain a lot of the imagery and then turn them into the pockets of the folio. So the interior pockets, I used the rose envelope. I had just love this rose envelope. So all I did was I cut out the complete envelope, and we'll just speed through this. Okay, so here's the cutout envelope. Now, what I did was, I'll unfold, I did glue down my little tab there, but what I did was I folded it up at the fold at the bottom, and that just constructed my first gusset. And then I did fold in, but what I did was I measured where I wanted the roses to show. So I took a pencil and I just sort of marked by eye where I needed the folds to go on the envelope. So then I took the envelope and I just folded it in on those lines that I just made, like this. And I did do it by hand. I didn't score them. I just sort of eyeballed it, and that worked fine. And then just to make it less bulky, I cut off the edges of the and I was sort of careful to cut and leave these scallopy edges because I may use those. So what I did was I just sort of followed the line of the scallop where the scallop folds on the original envelope. And then I just sort of mitered my corners so that it would be great for folding. And then what I did was I folded it down once again. I believe, let's see, I folded it in right about at the nose of the guy on the stamp. There's a stamp on these envelopes. Let me make sure I've got the right size. Yeah, that's about right. And then I made a little, I left a little extra so that I could fold it in and make a nice finished closure, because I just didn't want it to be the raw paper. And I'm just gonna glue it shut really quick like that so that I didn't forget to do that. And now it's done and it's closed. Okay, so, but then the next thing I did was I took this lovely envelope, the top of the envelope, and I also folded in the sides, and I'm going to copy the one I've got so that it matches really nicely. I folded in the sides like that. And then I folded the top down so that it would fold over my pocket top. So there we go. And then I did cut off these edges, and I did cut them so they'd be nice and straight. So I cut off my edges. I'm going to even up my fold at the top. There we go. And then what I want to do is I'm gonna put each of these on the top of my pocket. Now, I did ink around all the edges before I'm going to glue it down, and I inked on the inside of the paper. I would say I sort of wish I'd printed double side, but in thinking about it, I got the thought that maybe it would be nice to have these so they could flip up and you could write little something, secret nothings there. So I'm going to put that one right there, and I'm going to glue it on just with my art glitter glue because it dries nice and quick. I'm going to put it on my pocket, get it centered, and glue it on, and see, it'll flip up nicely. And then I'm going to do it to my other one. All right, put that on there. And that'll flip up nicely. Okay, now what I need to do is I need to adhere my pockets to the, but first I want to trim this a little bit so it's not so bulky. I'm going to put my pin back in my art glitter glue because, as you all know, this stuff turns to cement and quick little flash. So that pocket will go on that side. And then I'm going to do the same thing with these edges on this one. Just going to trim them off really quick And then what will happen is these pockets will have some room. They'll have little gussets, and they'll be able to really hold a tag or something down, and it'll be roomy in there, or sort of roomy. Okay, I'm gonna place this one on top of the file folder material, like that. There we go. That one. And I'm leaving an option to maybe decorate this with some doily. I often don't put too much real lace on these folios because they seem a little bit more ephemeral than a junk journal. A lot of the lace I have is antique lace. It's old. It comes from Europe. It comes from old barns, and I just don't know if I want to use up my really precious old lace on these folios. But I do think that using up doilies and whatnot on the folios is a really good idea. So here we've got a pocket here, and then to make it stay down and it'll have a thinner pocket on the inside, I am going to just attach these, just stick them down to there. And just so you can see, I'm going to try to grab something I can use as a guide to show you. You could see it would place, a picture would go nice down in there. And then you have this pocket right here. Where'd it go? Where'd my pocket go? Oh, there it is, right there. Right there. So you've got two pockets. You've got the top pocket and the underneath pocket. And that would make a nice little double pocket. You could put tags, journal cards, little pieces of paper that would look, and you've got this flip up that you could write on, so you could use it as a little memo pad. You might even, if you have a stamp that says memo, you could stamp it memo. All right, so let me get my pin and put it back in my glue. So we have those two interior pockets done, and then we're going to do these pockets on the outside. And you see, I did sort of scrumple up my pictures a little bit. I did go back in and work on those just a little. Okay, so I've cut out my reduced envelope, and on this one I'm going to fold down this flap, and I'm going to fold up this flap, and then I'm going to come over to my make sure I've got it the right level. I'm going to come over here and I'm going to mark where I need to fold it to go onto my pocket place. Then I'm going to fold it in like that and like that. Okay. And then I'm going to cut off. So I'm going to make a flap like I did on my other one that just makes a nice edge. And I'm going to come over here and I'm going to cut off this edge. And I'm going to cut off this edge. I'm going to cut off this edge and make a divot or a corner. Make a corner so that I can turn it up. Yeah, I might have cut it a little too short. So I'm just going to fold it out a little bit. Like that. Let's see if that works. That almost works perfectly. I'll do it on this side too. Okay. There we go. That's perfect. And then this will go down like this. Make sure they're the same height. That one's a little bit taller. So I think I'll fold it down and leave that black part off, because you'll see what I'm going to do with it in a bit. Let's see if that works. That's pretty good. I'm going to do the same thing with this one. Just fold it down a little bit. There we go. Okay, so now I'm just going to glue down, actually going to cut some of this off, and I'm going to glue down my piece right here. My little nozzle came off. I'll put that back on. Take my pin out. See, it's getting stuck. And then I'm going to glue this one down. Oh, it's this right here. Let me glue this one down. Okay. Alrighty. And then I'm going to go and get my, I'm going to cut these edges off right here, like I did on my rose ones, just so it doesn't get in the way. There we go. Make sure it still fits. There we go. That one fits. And I'm going to quick and run and get my circle punch so I can make little divots. So I'm just going to use this quick little circle punch. Make sure I'm cutting on the right side. And I'm just, actually, I'm going to do something I don't usually do. I'm going to mark it in the middle so that we can have it clearly in the middle, like that. And then I'm going to cut it so it doesn't look off center. There we go. And do this one. There we go. Okay, that one's a little deeper, isn't it? Oh, and see, it's going to show that. So this is a perfect time to use something like this as a liner, just to make it not show that where the divot's going to go. I'm just going to quickly glue that down. And you see how you can just sort of do this on the fly, and as you've been cutting up things, you can just start to use up your scraps in pursuit of trying to get it to look nice. And I've got another one over here, and I'm just going to cut that off and cut that off, and I'm going to put it on the other side like this. There we go. Glue it down really good. Okay. And then I'm going to, before I put down these little pockets, I am going to ink the little divots I made and just sort of ink around it. And what I love about this heavy Southworth 34-pound paper is it has a really neat leathery feel to it, and it just is such fun to work with because it just is so nice and strong. I just love this. I love this paper. Okay, so there we go. That's perfect. Okay, so now I'm just going to take my art glitter glue and I'm going to go along the edges, and I'm going to apply the pockets. And then I'm going to do the same thing I did with my other pockets. I'm going to make them so they're like a double pocket. I'm going to trim this one up a little bit because it has a bit of paper hanging off. Okay, there we go. And do the edges. And this way you'll have a double pocket. You can put something in the back pocket and something in the front pocket. Let's see, there we go. Okay, and then I'm going to take my glitter glue and I'm just going to put the rest of the pocket down, just on the sides. And I'm not going to glue the bottom because I don't want to make it so it's restrictive at the bottom. And you'll have to put something thinner in these sides, in the back pocket, because it doesn't have a gusset. So there we go. I'm just going to press this down like this. I'm going to get rid of all of my extraneous trash. Okay, so here are it's the folio mostly constructed. There we go, it closes. But I think I've gone on long enough. I think I'll make another video where I sort of work on things to go into this folio and make it a separate video. So I hope you liked learning how to make these little folios. You can really go to town on decorating them and really having a fun time with them. But for now, I'm going to say goodbye, and I'm going to probably just do a little bit of a film for a little bit of a video for the topper that I want to make for this folio, and then show some of the tags and things that we'll put inside. I may add a little journal, or I think I'll add some writing tabs on the side panels. Okay, thanks so much for watching. I hope you got something out of this. I hope you'll make some, if you're in a craft slump, you'll really find your mojo again by really finding a digital kit that you really love and just going to town making a fun folio, and then maybe sending it as a happy mail. I've accumulated quite a few that I'm going to put a few in my Etsy shop, and I'm also going to send some as happy mails. So thanks so much for watching, everybody. Have a really happy day. It was really nice spending some time with you. Bye.